I still remember the sound of their laughter, shrill and mocking, echoing through the corridors of my childhood home. It pierced my skin like 1,000 needles, each one laced with the venom of disbelief. "You'll disgrace us," my mother had shrieked, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and fear. "You're going to lose your mind, Jacob. This obsession will ruin you." I was a cursed verminologist, a title I had earned through years of relentless study and dark experimentation. Fired for exposing a rat infestation my former employers had swept under the rug, I had turned my back on a respectable career in pest control. Instead, I dove headfirst into the shadows of paranormal pest biology, entangling myself in the webs of urban legends that whispered of sickness and decay. Years later, that same laughter haunted me as I stood on the doorstep of my childhood home, the once familiar walls now looming like specters. I felt the weight of my past pressing down, the memories of ridicule and shame transforming into a strange sense of triumph mixed with dread. I had come home, not as a failure, but as a warning, a harbinger of horrors they could not dismiss. They were gathered in the living room, the same room where I had once laid out my maps and specimens, their faces twisted with disbelief and scorn. I could see the flicker of recognition in their eyes as I stepped inside. A wraith draped in shadows, my body marked by the struggles I had endured. I had survived encounters with vermin that clung to folklore like a parasite, but those tales were now far too real. "Jacob," my father's voice trembled, uncertainty lacing his tone. "What are you doing here?" "I came to show you," I replied, my voice low and steady. "The truth you refuse to see." The air thickened with tension as I revealed my findings, specimens in jars that glowed with an unnatural light, each one pulsing with the essence of the creatures I had captured. Their forms twisted and grotesque, a sickening blend of reality and nightmare. "These aren't just rats, Dad. They're conduits of ancient curses, vessels for the stories you laughed at. They spread sickness, yes, but they also carry truths that could unravel everything you think you know." I watched as their expressions shifted from disbelief to a dawning horror, wide eyes darting toward the jars as if fearing they might explode. "You're insane!" my sister spat, her voice cracking. "You've lost it, Jacob! This is madness!" But I had grown past their scorn. I was no longer the boy who wore his heart on his sleeve, desperately seeking their approval. I had learned to embrace the darkness, could dance with the shadows that clung to me like a second skin. "No, Rachel." "This is what madness looks like," I said, my voice a whisper that seemed to echo through the very walls. "This is the truth you couldn't bear to fathom." I had come prepared. I reached into my satchel, pulling out a small vial filled with a viscous, swirling liquid. It pulsed with a life of its own, reflecting the dim light of the room. "This is a serum I developed," I explained, my heart pounding as I stepped forward. "It reveals the true nature of the vermin's curse. I want you to see what I've seen." "What have you done?" My mother's voice was a wretched whisper, her face paling as I held the vial aloft. "You can't!" But it was too late. I uncorked the vial, the air thickening with an acrid scent that twisted my stomach. The liquid spilled onto the floor, hissing as it made contact with the old wood, the room filling with a shimmering mist. Shapes began to emerge, shadows that flickered and writhed like living nightmares, drawn from the depths of my findings. I stood transfixed, watching the horror unfold. My family gasped, stumbling back as the shadows morphed into grotesque vermin, their forms twisted and elongated, eyes gleaming with a sickly light. They scuttled across the floor, their movements frantic and erratic, as if they were searching for something or someone. "Jacob!" my mother screamed, her voice breaking. "What have you done?" The shadows surged, coiling around my family, their laughter morphing into shrill cries of terror. The vermin lunged at their feet, and I felt a sick surge of satisfaction mingling with the dread that filled the room. They were finally witnessing the consequences of their disbelief, the price of their ridicule. "Do you see them now?" I asked, my voice low and cold as I stepped back, allowing the shadows to envelop them. "Do you understand the horror I faced? This is what you mocked. This is what I became." As the vermin swarmed, gnashing their teeth, I felt the weight of my triumph crash over me like a wave. I had survived where they had failed to see, and now they were trapped in a nightmare of their own making. The air turned heavy with their cries, and I couldn't help but smile, a mixture of vindication and sorrow flooding my heart. I was no longer the boy they had ridiculed. I was the man who had faced the darkness and lived to tell the tale. As the shadows consumed them, I turned away, stepping back into the world that had once rejected me. I left behind the echoes of their laughter, now transformed into shrieks of terror, and stepped into the night, knowing that I had found my purpose among the vermin that whispered secrets of sickness. Standing on the threshold, I cast a final glance over my shoulder, the shadows of my family fading into the darkness. I had become the truth they feared, a living reminder of the cost of disbelief. And as I walked away, I felt the weight of their judgment lift, replaced by the chilling, undeniable echo of my own triumph, a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying truths come wrapped in the form of what we choose to ignore.